Hey guys, it's Theo. For those of you that have been following along, you may or may not know that I made this channel mainly to try out new things, learn new skills, and share my experience with whoever wants to do the same. And even though I have been uploading some content that doesn't exactly fit into my niche, mainly because it was convenient at that point, this video will be different. Because this has been on my bucket list, and I'm not talking about my YouTube bucket list, for a very long time. It's about traveling from point A to point B, long distance, with a bike. Growing up, I never really spent much time riding a bike. My earliest positive memory was getting my first in exchange of throwing away my pacifier when I was around 4, hence the overbite now. After that, I had a couple of bikes growing up that were either passed down on me or bought used at some sketchy second-hand market. And each one of them got stolen. Let me tell you, Germany is not that safe of a place for bicycles. After that, I just kind of lost interest and didn't even bother getting a new one. So I can say that up to this point, I haven't really ridden one in about 10 years maybe. And it could have stayed that way if I didn't stumble upon a British YouTuber that made a crazy tour around Japan with his bike. After watching him suffer, but also experience things I would probably never experience if I just stayed at home, I got hooked by the idea on trying it out myself. And since I couldn't really go to Japan for a couple of months, I wanted to try it out in my own country. Because if there's one place I haven't really seen much of, despite living here, then it was Germany. So that's kind of how I got the idea. This was even before I started YouTube, but I never really had the motivation, or better to say, the last spark to actually do it. But this year, with doing stupid stuff just to make a video and finding a companion who would actually try something like this with me, even though he himself wasn't in any shape nor mindset for it, I decided that I would finally go for it. And bought myself a bike. Now, I got this question a lot from friends and co-workers. I didn't buy an e-bike. And to be honest, if I had, this whole experience maybe could have been a lot more enjoyable and seem less like a punishment. But I had a way too big ego and not nearly enough money, so I talked myself into this great idea that having done something like this with a regular bike would mean so much more and make me prouder. So a month before the due date, I went and got myself a bike and started to train by riding to work and other places. And except one time where I started to have my thoughts if I would even survive an hour, I was pretty hyped about it. So I started the other preparation. We already decided we would ride to a relative of his who is living in Switzerland, which for those of you that don't know is located right underneath a lake called Bodensee. So my main goal was to reach this lake. Google Maps said that we had around 150 kilometers, so I looked up how many a person without any experience or stamina could actually take and decided that 30 to 50 should be the limit. After that, I knew that it would take us around 4 days to reach our destination. Oh, the fucking route. Let me tell you that this point was probably the most difficult one. At first, I thought we could just use Google Maps since there was a bike map already existing, but Google, let's just say, isn't the most trustworthy when it comes to bicycle routes. In a month training, we noticed that it sometimes led us into routes that didn't actually exist anymore or were closed. So you had to turn around and search for other ways to get to your destination. And there was just no way I wanted to do that in an unknown place with probably no internet reception. Because, let's be real, the internet reception is not that great in Germany. So I went and tried a bunch of other apps that were specifically made for biking or hiking, and after some try and errors, decided to go with Komoot. Just a notice, Komoot is sadly not sponsoring this video. Nevertheless, let me give you a review, since I have spent a lot of time on it and have a lot to say. First things first, we had some basic criteria for the route. First, we needed it to be as short as possible, while also having as little uphill as well, just to not die. Second, we didn't want to drive on streets where cars could speed, mainly for safety purpose, but also if you're a car driver. You know how annoying bikes up front can be. and we just didn't want to be that person. So after putting just our start and finishing destination, we noticed that we had a lot to work on, because the fastest way was not the best one for our situation. Komoot luckily has the function that you can log onto the website via browser and change the route with drag and drop, or put in some road points along the side you want to add. After having tested the app for a couple of days, I decided that it would be the wisest decision to get their premium version. Mainly because you could plan multiple day trips and have offline routes accessible, which, especially for me, who ended up with some mobile problems a week prior to the trip and had no internet connection or whatsoever throughout the whole thing, was kind of very important too. The premium comes with a variety of features that are pretty nice, and since they had a sale season on it, which made it a bit more affordable, I brought the 1-year prescription. After finally putting together our routes for each day and booking the hotels, motels, Airbnb and whatsoever, the last thing to do for planning was some spare tires in case I run over some sharp things, some other utensils like raincoats, snacks, etc. And we were ready to go. Oh, something else that bothered me was the weather forecast. I don't know how it is in other countries or other regions, but the past weeks I was constantly checking on the weather forecast to see how reliable it would be, and got disappointed pretty soon. There was just no way of saying if there would be rain or burning 30 degrees in the shadows. So I decided to dress onion style on the day we wanted to start, mainly because at 9 o'clock, the time we actually decided to go, it started raining. So we waited another hour or so and the rain had stopped, exchanging itself with some badass humidity over the next couple of hours. The weather itself was a huge challenge, because it was way too sunny and way too hot. I don't usually sweat at all, maybe get some sweaty palms or feet, but if I don't do anything too exhausting, I won't sweat. This changed over the past 4 days to a point where I would sweat only standing up. My companion was even worse. His body got so confused that when he actually got to a place that was air conditioned, he started pouring sweat down as if he opened a faucet. Something was definitely going on in our bodies. Actually, this whole experience was a challenge for our body. It started with him getting hurt even before we sat on our bike by getting his finger caught in the spokes. Then me managing to hurt myself over and over again with the pedals on the bike, then getting sunburned because of long roads without any shadows, and sweating away all the sunscreen that was applied. Oh, and me not feeling my knees after the first day because my saddle wasn't adjusted high enough, and feeling constant pain on the first night that made me want to quit right away. And last but not least, a damn wasp flying into my shirt on the last 100 meters before our arrival and stinging me in my breast. I was done, physically and mentally. But each day I woke up and got the bike ready, I knew that apart from the pain, the sight I would see would kind of make up for it. Germany has a lot to offer when it comes to landslides. We rode through forests, besides rivers, through fields with people working on tractors. We saw many small villages I would never have seen if I went with a car, and climbed mountains and drove all the way back down enjoying the view. And even though I swore to myself to never do something like this ever again, at least not under those weather conditions, those memories still feel very pleasant and I could never regret doing it. And even though we cheated a bit by taking the train a couple of times at route parts where there was an extreme incline of high, I was very proud of myself when we reached the Bodensee on the 4th day. We also found an amazing pizza place right beside the water. It didn't look as promising at first, but the pizza was the best one I have eaten in a long time. So if you're ever down there, check it out. I will, just like always, include all the links to places and gear I have used in the description box. Our tour didn't actually stop at the Bodensee, since we did go all the way to Switzerland with the boat, but I forgot to film the last part, mainly because we had to climb a fucking mountain to get to our destination. If you know Switzerland, you will know what I mean. But the last part was just us pushing our bikes uphill for an hour and a half through a forest with around 70% incline. at the worst parts. Yeah, I don't even know where we got the energy for it at this point, but yeah. Switzerland is beautiful, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't want to bike through it again. Especially since we had to push those 5 kilometers while some older folks that probably couldn't even walk anymore were just passing us by with the e-bikes. I can't tell you how much I despised e-bikes at this point. And it's not that I hate them, I was just jealous. I was just jealous, yeah. Well, and that's it. Would I ever do it again? Hell no. But do I regret doing it? No. I think an experience like this is something everyone should do at least once in their life. The combination of pushing yourself past your limits and getting rewarded by beautiful scenery is just something that could even move my heart. And that's a lot to say. I do have some tips for people that want to try it as well and have the same level of experience as I have. Get yourself a decent bike. Maybe even an e-bike, but if you don't have enough money like me, just make sure it's the right size and that you have adjusted the height of everything right. Just the saddle alone. I mean, you will notice on the first day of a longer trip if the saddle wasn't rightly adjusted. The next one is probably pretty obvious, but always make sure to have enough water and snacks with you, just to stay hydrated and don't lose energy. Along the way you would probably not feel hungry or thirsty, but just remember to eat and drink regularly and you will be fine. This one is something that happened to me. So just be careful when you ride down some unknown downhill forest trail with big stones, because I managed to break my front wheel to a point that after coming back I had to replace it. And I don't wish anyone to have to go through this, especially after such journey. So some people will probably argue about this, especially if you go camping, but for me at least, booking hotels or the places to sleep in general beforehand was a huge help. It's not about searching for a place when you're exhausted, it's about the mindset you have that each day you have a goal and you know where the goal is. And those last miles are especially hard, but if you have a final destination in mind, you kind of get a power boost, and this does help you finish each day. Another tip, which is probably something everybody knows, but invest in a good backpack. You will carry a lot of weight, especially on your back, where you just have your random necessaries. And if you have a bad backpack, you will feel every gram you have packed too much, which will lead to you having back pain or your shoulders feeling sore. And you could just avoid this by getting a good backpack that has like those straps in front or maybe at the stomach as well, which will be a huge relief. So yeah. Just invest in a good backpack if you're at it. Oh, and if you plan to make a video about it, try to film as much as possible. Even though I did plan to make this video afterwards, I ended up forgetting to film on the road, which was especially disappointing at situations that were hilarious or like very interesting. So at the end of the trip I just didn't have enough footage that I could really use, which kind of didn't motivate me to make this video, I'm gonna be honest. All of this was mainly because I was just too tired and immersed in staying alive, just moving forward, that I just didn't end up filming anything. Filming a bike tour is annoying as hell. And if you don't have someone with you to ride up in front, stop, start the camera and film you while you pass them and then take the camera and move again, I just couldn't be bothered by it. I don't know, I was so defeated at this point that just staying alive was my main objection. And so just keep in mind that you will probably forget it. And that just because you couldn't film a certain part, it doesn't mean that this whole video should be thrown away. Just look at me, I managed to know you for almost 20 minutes I think at this point. And I didn't have nearly as much footage as I should have. With this, I do want to thank you all for watching this far, and please consider hitting that like button just to trigger the algorithm. And I hope to have gained you as a subscriber if you have enjoyed this video as much as I have suffered. I do wish you a wonderful day, and I hope to see you all in the next one.